Gareth Roberts. We've got a lovely view of the
Hello.
bottom half of your head. We can't see your eyes or your forehead. Ah, there we go.
Well, Bamada, Pab, good morning, everyone. It is 9:30.
Recording in progress.
So we shall make a start. So first item on the agenda is apologies. Lisa, do we have any apologies, please?
We do. We have Marion Bateman, Sharon Dolman, Chris Hughes, Gareth Jones, Paul Rogers, and Gareth Sandilands.
Thank you for that. Is anybody aware of any other apologies that we haven't received?
So, Chairman, I just I'll let you know that I'll have to leave at 11:30. I've got another meeting at 12 o'clock.
Okay, we might have been optimistic. We might have finished by 11:30. We'll see how it goes. Thank you for letting us know. Dear. Okay, if there's no other apologies, we'll move on to item number 2, which is declaration of interest. Are there any declarations of interest from anyone, please? I can't see any hands being raised. So item number 3 is notice of urgent matters. There are no notifications of any urgent matters, so that doesn't apply. So item number 4 is the minutes of the last full authority meeting, which was held on the 21st of October of last year. So we'll take it for accuracy to begin with. So page number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4, number 5, number 6, number 7, number 8, number 9, number 10, number 11, number 12, and lastly, page 13. I can't see any hands being raised to say that they don't agree with the minutes of the last meeting. So can I have somebody to propose and second that we accept them? Thank you, Deputy Chair. Thank you. I think Gareth was next. So will you please all show that you approve the minutes of the last meeting? That's great. And can I thank member services again for those comprehensive and accurate minutes that have been produced. So we move on to item number 5, which is matters arising. So there's a few matters arising that I'd draw attention to, which came under the Chief's report last time. And if I can perhaps invite the Chief to comment on 3 aspects. There was number 7.3, which is the forthcoming inspection from the fire advisor. There's item number 7.6, which referred to the consultation on a new governance model. And there's item 7.8, referring to the Deputy Chief Fire Officer leaving us, but I think we may have an update on that. So I'll hand over to the Chief. Thank you, Chief.
Thank you very much, and thank you for the opportunity to update members. Things move fast in the world of fire and rescue services. At 7.3, we've talked about the Chief Fire and Rescue Advisor and his review into firefighting tactics, which he has completed in South Wales and published last week his report into Mid and West Wales Fire Service. So he's starting that work with us. He's got the raw data at the moment, and he's starting the field work within the service on the 27th of January. With the intention that that work should be completed sometime in February and then published after that. And we will keep you informed. Councillor Cunningham, have you got a comment or a question?
Yes, Chief, I'd just like to say it's a good thing that this is happening. You know, we know that things are changing in the firefighting field, and I think it's good that we've got someone who is going to look into how we can proceed forward, and perhaps this might help us when we decide what we need if and when we get our new training establishment. Thank you, Chief.
Absolutely. It will definitely feed into that specification. Moving on to 7.6, where we talk about Welsh Government looking into potential governance arrangements for the fire and rescue services in Wales. As you know, it is pressing more in South Wales because there needs to be a decision on what happens after the commissioners are removed from that fire service. But from what the chair and myself can gather from the cabinet secretary, she is looking for to go out to consult on potential options. I don't think it's that she will be actually setting out her preferred options, but she will be asking for views, and that will now be in the spring. I know that there's been an opportunity in the past through the WLGA to feeding potential options, but she's still looking at that with the idea that they will put in place whatever they can without legislation before the next elections, and then look to bring in primary legislation after that. Just seeing if there's any hands or questions. No. Okay. And then finally 7.8. And yes, we did think that the Deputy Chief Fire Officer was planning to retire and leave us. Fortunately, he's had a change of heart, and you'll see he's here with us today. So I'm very pleased to to welcome Stuart Forshaw back. However, we are losing two very important members of the service leadership team. So Justin Evans, who has been acting as an Assistant Chief Fire Officer for the last year, and you will have received reports from him. He has decided to retire at the end of March. And also Tracy Williams, our head of comms, who's been head of comms for 15 years here. Tracy has also decided that she wants to go on to the next part in her life. So we'll very much miss both of them. And I'd like to put on record my thanks for all their hard work.
Thank you, Chief. So there's some bittersweet sort of news here. So yes, certainly we welcome the fact that Stuart Forshaw is staying with us. And can I also take this opportunity to welcome back ACFO Stuart Millington? It's good to have you with us, Stuart. Croeso nôl, welcome back. But yes, it is sad news that Justin Evans is departing, and also Tracy, who is with us, attending the meeting today. And I'm sure on behalf of the authority that you'd like me to thank them both sincerely for all their excellent work and service to the service over many years, and to wish them well in the future. So all the best for the future, and diolch yn fawr iawn I chi. And apologies, I should have early on welcomed Councillor Anthony Wren to the meeting, because I think it's your first authority meeting, Anthony?
It is, yes, thank you for the welcome.
Right, so, and apologies if I missed anybody else out. So any comments or questions for the Chief following that update? I can't see any hands being raised. No, so going back to matters arising, item 9 was an update on the new training centre, and I know that we're now in the process of establishing a project board. Can I invite the Deputy to give us an update? Thank you, Stuart.
Thank you, Chair. So members will be aware that we set up a members project working group when we started looking at the training centre business case. That business case, as members will be aware, was approved at October's Fire Authority meeting. So members of that project working group were then asked for expressions of interest to then become a member of what will be a project board. Now, with that, we're getting the project governance set up and in place for managing this project through. We had Councillor Sanderlands, who we're very grateful to put himself forward to be the representative on the project board for the authority, and we intend to have our first meeting in the coming weeks to establish what will be then the project governance going forward, to work on the more detailed business case and in-depth design of what will be a new training centre to bring back to members at a point in time when we'll be requesting to the budget to proceed with the build. So thank you, Chair. I hope that updates members.
Thank you for that, Stuart. And I know that he isn't with us, but my thanks to Councillor Gareth Sandilan for putting his name forward, and I'm sure he'll bring added value to the project board on behalf of the authority. I can't see any other matters arising from the minutes of the last meeting unless any other members have spotted something that they want to raise. I can't see any hands being raised, so that concludes that particular item agenda. So going on to the next item, which is the Chair's report. So you will have had the quarterly report detailing what myself and the Deputy Chair have been up to in terms of attending various meetings and events. I don't know if there's any comments or questions in relation to the report. Can't see any hands being raised. Just as an addendum, can I just take this opportunity as the chair? I'm sure that many of you would have seen on the Welsh News last night the excellent work that firefighters have been doing in the Conway area in terms of delivering water to residents following the burst pipe and the loss of water. And just once again, it just shows how willing and able members of the fire service are to sort of step in and help the community when they're in crisis. Deputy Chair, do you want to come in?
Yes, Chair. Just to mention that a former firefighter who joined the former Clwyd in 1974, Brian Golding from Colwyn Bay, has died, and his funeral is on the 31st of this month. Alas, I will be up at Penrith and I won't be able to attend to represent the fire authority. But if there are any members from the Colwyn Bay area who might be able to, it's in the Methodist Church. I'll send details to Lisa, and perhaps someone could represent the fire authority at his funeral.
Thank you, Paul, for bringing that to our attention, and I'm sure that we can arrange for a member of the fire authority to represent us at the funeral. Thank you for that. If there's no comments or questions, then we move on to item number 7 on the agenda, which is the Independent Cultural Review, and I'm handing over to the Chief for an update. Thank you, Chief.
Diolch. Bore da. I'm pleased to be able to provide members with an update on the progress of the Independent Cultural Review into North Wales Fire and Rescue Service. If you can think back to this time last year, South Wales Fire and Rescue Service were about to publish their Independent Cultural Review. Their review had been led by Fenella Morris, KC, and you might remember that that report contained criticisms not only about practices within the Fire and Rescue Service, but it also contained some appalling examples of behaviours by firefighters. On the back of that report, Welsh Government intervened. They removed the fire authority and they put in place 4 commissioners to help run the service. In many ways, that was quite a dramatic step, with Welsh Government in effect taking away representatives from the local councils and the voice of those local councils that fund South Wales Fire and Rescue Service. And at the same time, there was concern that there may have been similar behaviours happening in North Wales Fire and Rescue Service or Mid and West Wales Fire and Rescue Service. The then Deputy Minister, Hannah Blythin, met with myself and the Chair, and she was reassured that we were further along our cultural change journey than perhaps South Wales was. She was reassured not just by what we said, but because she'd met personally firefighters, control operators, and female members of staff who told her about their experiences working for North Wales Fire and Rescue Service. However, we suggested that an independent review of North Wales Fire and Rescue Service would be helpful to hear the voice of our people and to receive recommendations as how we could progress further and faster. The contract to undertake the work was issued to Crest Advisory in June 24, and they started their field work first in Mid and West Wales and then in North Wales. And this has been a very comprehensive piece of work, and we didn't even receive the first initial draft for fact checking until the 23rd of December. Now, there's still work to be done on both reports to incorporate corrected facts and to have the reports translated. So although in the pack that you've received, I've mentioned the date of the 27th of January being the date that we will publish this report, there's probably going to be a little bit of slippage due to the need to make sure that it's accurate and translated. And we're also very keen to coincide our publication date with that of Mid and West Wales. So it's probably going to be either late January or the very, very latest, sort of the first week in February, in which those reports will be published. So because of that, I can't share the actual report with you here today. But there is some good points that I'd like to just put over to you. So about a third of our people took part in the survey and the interviews. So, you know, that's a good proportion, around 300 of 1,000 employees. And there are fortunately no individual incidents of appalling sexism or racism in their behaviours. However, there are themes around leadership style that we already know about and that we are addressing. We do need to recognise that change can be difficult, and different people, they change at different rates. And we need to help them understand that a style of management that might have been appropriate many years ago is not right for today. So we have got work that we need to do in that matter. Overall, it is pleasing to see that there's a recognition that the culture has improved over the last 3 years, and the majority of people that responded are very proud to work for North Wales Fire and Rescue Service, and they would recommend this service as a good place to work, which then is pleasing for all of us, because only through that we can make sure that we can be delivering the very best of services. And finally, I'd like to mention that when the chair and I met with representatives of the Fire Brigades Union last week, they were very keen to say that they wanted to support us on our cultural journey. They're not about throwing stones. They have the best interests of the service and all our employees. And we look forward to working very positively with them on our cultural journey. So I'm happy to take any questions or comments that members might have.
Thank you, Chief, for that reassuring update. I do just want to make one comment before I throw it over to members. Obviously, it's difficult for us to make informed comments when we haven't seen the actual draft report as yet. But can I just draw members' attentions to the second recommendation, which says, agree to nominate representatives of the authority to attend a webinar with Crest to discuss the findings of the review and recommendations for the future. I understand that that recommendation has come from Crest themselves. I don't support the recommendation because I feel that all members of the authority should be given the opportunity to attend the webinar, because I think it's such an important matter that I don't think anybody should be excluded. And I think it would be difficult for us to decide who should attend if we've only been allowed to sort of select a cohort of members. So I'd be interested to hear members' views on that, but certainly my own view is that we should all be given an invitation to attend that webinar. So over to you, members, for any comments or questions. Diolch. I think Councillor Mark Jones just beat the Deputy Chair. Mark?
Yeah, I fully support what you're proposing. I think we need to discuss this once we've had full sight of the report. And obviously, I would imagine it'll be on the agenda for the next meeting with that regard. And I think we should all be encouraged to attend the webinar.
Thank you for that, Mark. Deputy Chair?
He took the words right out of my mouth, Chair, so I'll put my hand down.
Thank you for that, Paul. Any other comments or questions from members? I take it, therefore, that Mark is proposing that we change recommendation 2, and that's supported by the Deputy Chair. So I'm going to put it to members now that we accept recommendation 1 as it stands. Note the progress of the independent cultural review and the timescales for publication contained in the report with sort of the amendment from the chief. And recommendation 2, that we change it so that all representatives of the police authority are invited to attend the webinar. If you're all in agreement, will you please show? Excellent, thank you very much. That's unanimously passed. So we go on to the next item on the agenda, which is the provisional outturn for 2024-25. And I think it's Elgin Roberts as the head of finances presenting this. Elgin, diolch yn fawr.
Diolch diolch bore da pawb. Happy to take any
Good morning, everyone.
Welsh English, but I'll do the report in English. So today is an update on the provisional outturn based at the end of December. I won't go through the full report as it's building on the last quarterly update, but I will highlight paragraph 13. So since the last report, we've now had clarity over the pay award for local government staff. So we put into the budget 4%, and we have seen that people on pay points 2 to 43 have had an increase of just under £1,300, and all staff on pay points 44 and upwards have received 2.5%. So it's resulted in a slight cost pressure. So the average was just over 4%, but it's been managed internally this year. And then moving on to the full report, it's anticipated that we will have a outturn that could range from anywhere between a break-even forecast to £1 million underspent before transfer to earmarked reserve this year. However, based on year-to-date expenditure, the most likely full year forecast at the end of December indicates an underspend of just over £500,000. The range in the outturn position is due to filing, which there is an ongoing legal challenge, which could potentially reduce the in-year cost by £500,000. But as it's not clear whether this matter will be settled by the year end, an earmarked reserve will be established. So just going through into a bit more detail about the individual categories. So employee cost represents over 70% of our annual budget, and the forecast expenditure for employees this year is resulting in an underspend of just over 1.1 million. So I've included a flowchart, water flowchart in the report, which breaks it down, but I'll pull out the key features of that. So recruitment and retention of RDF staff have been a challenge. And as you can see from the table as well, we've got a budget of 474, and that excludes the 30 additional resilience posts. As of April, we had 459 headcount, but positively since September and December, it's crept up. So we've had 487 in September and 492 headcount in December. So although that's above the budget, it's still underneath the budget with the additional 30 resilience in place. To offset that underspend for RDS, we are seeing an increase in overtime, which is the blue part of the chart. We've also seen a higher than anticipated retirement from whole-time staff, but positively from January, another 10 cohorts of firefighters apprentices have started, so that will close the gap. And there's also difficulties in recruiting specialised posts within corporate departments, which is also adding towards the underspend for employee cost. Moving on to non-pay, so essentially that's everything that is not income, capital, or employee related, forecasting to be overspent by £200,000. So positively, we've seen a reduction in facilities costs, which is your gas, oil, and electricity. So we've had an in-year saving of approximately 180,000 there, but that's offsetting increase in inflation on vehicle costs. Linking into the report we just had from the chair, the cost of the culture review, and also issuing of PPE from stock as well. We've seen a large increase in cost due to issuing of stock that was purchased last year. But with that as well, we have seen some cost savings, so reduction in some of the contracts we've had and a reduction in some IT cost as well. You will notice within the report there's a slippage on whole Matro hydraulics replacements that were funded or budgeted this year. Unfortunately, only half of that will be achieved this year, with the other half slipping into next year. So one of the notes is to note the movement to reserve for 25-26. Just on income, so we're expecting income to overachieve budget. That is predominantly due to the fact that we've had additional income coming in from Welsh Government that wasn't anticipated around Op Ugain. We've also had £88,000 of income due to sale of vehicles. And recently as well, we've had additional funding coming in to support with pay pressures for 24-25 financial year from Welsh Government, and the remaining top-up for SCAPE grants from local authorities. For capital programme, we've got an approved budget of 5.6 million this year, with 1.1 million rollover funding from 23-24. So far, we've spent 1.1 million on capital schemes, and we are forecasting by the end of the year to spend 4.4 million. This results in a slippage of just under 1.4 million that is being requested to roll over to fund these schemes during the next financial year. And just to break down that 4.4 million of capital expenditure for this year, we're anticipating that 3.7 million will be funded by borrowing and 700,000 will be funded from earmarked reserves. Thank you.
Diolch, Elgan. So I'll throw it open to members for comments and questions, please. Councillor Mark Young, Brodor Mark.
Hello, Brodor, diolch yn fawr. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, just obviously we have to play on the side of caution, Elgin. I just want us to clarify where we're putting money in which might not be needed. So we're asking councils for substantial extra money to cover maybes. What happens if we do win the case you're talking about, which potentially could save us £1 million? So what do we do about that? If it goes the right way and we haven't needed the money, how do we correct that with money we've already, we're going to be requesting, please? Thank you, Chair.
I think ACFO Helen MacArthur is going to answer that one. Helen, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Young. The budget in 24-25 relating to the airwave was established correctly at that time. Since that time, the legal challenge has gone to appeal. If it is successful, I would propose that we would put that money into reserves for the future costs associated with the emergency service network. That is likely to gather pace and momentum over the next couple of years, and there will be both revenue and capital obligations falling on us to implement that. So I think it would be wise and prudent to reserve that money should that fall in our favour.
Satisfied with that answer, Mark?
Yeah. Well, yeah.
And over to the other Mark, Councillor Mark Jones. Diolch.
Thank you. Diolch. Are we not setting ourselves up for a problem with the RDS headcount? If we're aiming for 30 on top of the 474, and we've done well to get up to 492, that creates a budgetary pressure. Shouldn't we be budgeting for the additional 30? Because from what I can see, we're having to pay out extra overtime on that shortfall. Please correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we should be budgeting for the extra 30 rather than finding ourselves having to find extra money if we do hit the target, or having to pay more overtime.
Yeah, apologies. It might be the way that it's worded in the report. So the 474 is the sort of the core budget we have in for RDS, but as part of the budget setting last year, I'm not sure if it was in the previous year as well, there's an ambition to recruit additional 30 RDS because we budget based on headcount, not on need. So it was to build that up, not to slip into a future agenda item in terms of budget setting, but that has been reduced for 25-26 from 30 to 15 staff. So yes, the headcount is the 474 plus the 30, and it is all budgeted.
Okay. Yeah.
Perhaps I can sort of ask a supplementary in relation to your question, Mark, because I am a little bit concerned about sort of, it says that it's been necessary to utilise overtime. I couldn't actually see any specific costs in relation to the overtime. What I'm not sure about is that okay, if we've got sort of staff vacancies and we're paying overtime, does that mean that we save money or we're losing money by having to pay overtime to cover, posts that aren't available? Do we have any more information?
I'm happy to come in on that if I may, please. When we set the budget, we set a budget for the headcount of staff in post in relation to the RDS. We also set a supplementary budget for the aspiration of recruiting. In addition to that, we fully fund the establishment around the whole time. During the course of the year, people retire, people are promoted, people perhaps gone out with secondment. So where there are gaps and we have to fill those, we do utilise the overtime. It isn't absolutely cost neutral for us because overtime is on occasions does attract a premium. But actually that's managed in the totality of the budget. So there isn't a need to set an overtime budget for when people do retire because there's an underspend from the establishment. I'm not sure if that fully answers the query.
It certainly explains the process. Thank you, Helen. I'm just wondering if perhaps when you say it may not be exactly cost neutral, I'm wondering if we should have more financial management information just for us to get a better picture just going forward. So thank you. Any other questions or comments from anyone, please? I can't see any hands being raised. In that case, can I refer members to the recommendations that are contained on page 22 of the papers? So there's 3 recommendations. Members are asked to 1, note the projected revenue outturn position, the projected capital slippage for the 2024-25 financial year as detailed within the report. 2, note the risks associated with the provisional outturn and recognise that the figures forecasted in this report are prudent. And 3, note the proposed movement to reserves of £0.070 million for slippage on non-pay expenditure relating to operating equipment. Can I have somebody to propose, please?
I'm happy to do that, Chair.
Thank you, Mark Young. Second, please. Thank you, Councillor Brian Apsley. Will you show that you're all in agreement with the recommendations? Diolch yn fawr, that's been passed. So the next item on the agenda is the emergency cover review update, and I think it's the deputy that's reporting on this. Thank you, Stuart.
Chair, with your permission, it'll be myself reporting.
That's fine, Anthony. Over to you. Thank you.
Diolch yn fawr, bore da pawb. Good morning, everybody. The purpose of this report is to provide members with an update of the work of the Emergency Cover Review Task and Finish Group that was established in response of the decision made by the Fire Authority on its meeting on the 18th of December 2023. The purpose of this group was to research and develop a new permanent option to improve the provision of emergency cover across North Wales. The Task and Finish group was chaired by a watch manager from Deeside Fire Station, with the deputy chair being a watch manager from Rhyl Fire Station. The group comprised of 16 colleagues working at various levels from across stations and departments throughout the service and included representatives from the Fire Brigade Union. The group met on 12 occasions between February and November 2024, and during this time they discussed and researched several emergency response models. At the authority meeting on the 15th of July 2024, members were presented with a progress report, and they agreed for the Task and Finish group to further research models 2 and 3 or variations of them, and that's as seen in paragraph 13 of this report. By the 10th of November 2024, the Fire Brigade Union's representative concluded that Model 2, specifically the 5-watch whole time duty system, would not work and verbally withdrew from the Task and Finish group on the 11th of November 2024. On the 17th of December 2024, the Chief Fire Officer and the Deputy Chief Fire Officer met with the work stream leads and the Fire Brigade Union Chair to confirm this position and to thank all of those involved for their hard work and diligence. Officers and the Fire Brigade Union representatives have been having very positive and encouraging conversations in both formal and informal meetings. We've agreed to continue to devise and test alternative solutions within the agreed budget to address emergency cover in our rural locations. The primary focus of this work is to continue to work in social partnership to a point of agreement with the exploration of the suggestions and ideas from the Fire Brigade Union and staff in relation to improving the resilience within our existing whole-time and day crewing duty systems. Once negotiated and agreed, this work will continue to look at alternative models that can be used to address emergency cover in rural locations. So the recommendations within the report are that members are asked to note that officers continued to work with staff and representative bodies in social partnership to develop the emergency cover review research models 2 and 3 or variations of them. Note the agreed conclusion that the 5-watch duty system will not work in North Wales, and as a result of the withdrawal of the Fire Brigades Union and closure of the Task and Finish working group. Appreciate the efforts and contributions made by the Emergency Cover Review Task and Finish group members, and ask officers to continue to devise and test alternative solutions with the representative bodies within the agreed budget to address emergency cover in rural locations. Diolch yn fawr iawn. Thank you very much, and I'm very happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Ant, for the update. Chief, do you want to come in?
Yes, I think I just want to emphasise that, you know, working relationships with all rep bodies, including the Fire Brigades Union, are very good. I think the working group, having done so much work, understood that these models that they were looking at wouldn't work with the limited resources that we have here in North Wales, and therefore, rather than waste any more time, they decided not to withdraw from that part of the project, but very keen, and we met with Rebecca and Terry last week, and they are very keen from an FBU perspective that we continue to explore other solutions. So I just want to emphasise that good working relationship and that social partnership that we have.
Thank you, Chief, and I want to echo those comments. In fact, sort of the FBU representatives were concerned that we might get the wrong picture by the fact that they'd withdrawn from being involved in the process of pursuing Model 2, whereas in fact they are fully invested in the process of wanting to work with representatives within the fire service and officers to find a solution. And in fact, I have just opened my emails this morning and received further proposals from the FBU as to possible workable solutions going forward, and those will be considered by the Emergency Cover Review Working Group. So we're not there yet, but there's certainly a lot of discussions and negotiations taking place, and there certainly seems to be a will on all sides to find a workable solution to improve cover in our rural areas. I do think, though, as chair, that I do need to say that we do have to come up with a workable solution sooner rather than later, because 12 months has passed since this working group was established to try and find a solution. And I know that everybody's working really hard, but there is a risk out there in our rural communities, and we do have to try and find a workable solution. So hopefully we will come up with something before too long. I think Councillor Mark Jones first, and then Councillor Gwynfor Owen. Diolch.
I was concerned when I read the report that we seem to have come to a bit of a dead end. I'm reassured to hear that things are continuing. My understanding was there was a working group now established, whether that's formal or not, to continue this work. I'm as I said, I'm more reassured having heard the verbal updates here. Have we got a deadline in place for this work? Because I agree that something needs to happen and needs to happen as soon as possible. So do we have a deadline in place?
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Jones. What I can assure members is the members of our transformation team, the members of the Fire Brigades Union, and the chair and deputy chair of the working group are meeting again tomorrow. So that work is most carrying on in earnest. They are very aware that we need to keep the momentum going, and as the chair has rightly said, get to a solution sooner rather than later. So rather than an actual deadline, my expectation, my desire from that working group and my request that we've agreed on is that we will be working really hard to get this something to one of our negotiation and consultation committees as soon as possible, and they're every 6 weeks. So the next one of those is in February, and obviously it will be 6 weeks after that if we're unable to make the February one. But please rest assured we are working, we are keeping that momentum going to get something negotiated within either that next meeting or the meeting after.
Thanks for that. I think it would have been useful to have that in the written reports, that there is a working group, because I think it does present a slightly different picture to what is in the actual report. So I don't know if we can provide an additional clause in the recommendation that we support the work of this working group to take the matter forward. Can I propose that?
You can certainly propose it, Mark. I don't know if anybody wants to second it. I don't know if we need it as a proposal or if it will just do the fact that we know that it has been sort of recorded in the minutes. But that's I'll throw that open to members. Councillor Beverly Parry-Jones. Beverly, do you want to come in?
Thank you, Chair. I'm happy to second Mark's proposal.
That's fine. So when we come to the recommendations, we'll include that to vote upon. Cynghorydd Gwynfor Owen.
Councillor Gwynfor Owen. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Can I also say that I feel better having heard what the officers have said rather than just reading it as a report. I was very sad reading the report, but also the main point I want to make is to reinforce the words that you have said, Mr. Chairman, that this process has taken a year now. But of course, it taken a year before that too, where as members, the process has taken 2 years, and in fact, has taken most of the time that I have been a member of this authority, and I am very disappointed that there has been no solution so far. But I am grateful to have heard what the officers have said, and I hope that for the welfare and the security of people in the rural areas, that there will be a rapid solution found. Thank you. Thank you, Gwynfor.
Questions from members? I can't see any hands being raised. In that case, I refer members to the 4 recommendations that have already been presented, plus we will now add the 5th recommendation as outlined by Councillor Mark Jones. If you're in agreement, will you show, please? Diolch yn fawr. That's been unanimously passed. So we go on to item number 10, which is the budget setting for 2025-26. And it's over to you, Helen, please. Diolch.
Thank you, Chair. This item relates to our budget setting for the next financial year, which starts on the 1st of April. And it also concludes the work over the last 6 months, both by officers and also members of the Budget Scrutiny Working Group. The elements of this report have been reported previously to members of the authority at its meeting in October, also through the Budget Scrutiny Working Group that has met on numerous occasions, the Audit Committee and Executive Panel in December 2024. Overall, the budget setting process for next year has been overseen by the Budget Scrutiny Working Group. I don't intend to repeat the background as the detail is set out in the report and has been previously considered by members. What I can confirm is that since presentations in December, final planning assessment remains unchanged and the budget requirement for next year remains at 52.389 million. Within that, it's proposed that reserves of 600,000 are utilised, and importantly, this is for non-recurring expenditure. That leaves a levy requirement of 51.8 million, which is an increase of 7%, and notably fully includes the additional national insurance that was announced in the last budget. Importantly, the final figure includes actions taken through the Budget Scrutiny Working Group to reduce the initial planning assessment, but also incorporates previously unidentified cost pressures. And I think it's important for members to be aware of the key elements that we have included within the budget. I'll start with employee costs because previously reported by Elgan, these account for over 70% of our budget. Within the budget setting process, we've made full provision for all staff in post. And that includes all of the whole time, the corporate staff, the RDS, and also any approved vacancies. Importantly, we've actually built additional capacity within the RDS budget, and that's an additional number of staff, and that's to help us improve availability. So the work around recruitment and availability of retained colleagues is ongoing throughout the year. And what we see in that cohort of staff is that a number of staff join us and a number of staff leave and retire. So it's really important that work continues, but equally important, picking up Councillor Mark Jones's point earlier, that we build capacity in the budget to make sure that we don't create a financial problem should we be able to increase the numbers. Notably, the full year impact of the national uplift to RDS pay rates during this financial year has been fully incorporated, and that puts an initial cost pressure of £1 million. And that relates to the retaining fee, and that's increased for our retained colleagues by 50% this year. Planning assessment of 3% for cost of living increase for next year has been incorporated, and we've worked both within the sector, within Wales and nationally within the sector to make sure that is reasonable. And we've also linked with colleagues in local authorities across North Wales. Turning to the non-pay, this is an area that does fluctuate quite considerably year on year, and certainly for 25-26, we've looked to make savings within our technical operations and also our facilities. We've benefited from more stability in gas and electricity costs, and also reductions in national non-domestic rates for some properties where we've put appeals in. We are continuing to experience ICT cost pressures, and that relates to a number of factors. The reliance now that we have on ICT, making sure that our system is as cyber secure as it can be, and also replacement of software. We've identified some additional costs relating to flow meters in fire appliances and also replacement software within our command and control system. So that's about mobilising our fire appliances. What we intend to propose is that use of reserves for one-off expenditure, and therefore making sure that we don't create an ongoing cost pressure by using reserves in the short term. As discussed previously, there remains uncertainty regarding the Firelink contract, and that is due to that ongoing legal challenge. Turning finally to the capital financing and interest, about 7% of our revenue budget is consumed by making a contribution towards the use of our capital assets, and also through borrowing costs associated with those assets. We have a number of loans maturing in 25-26, which require refinancing. Sadly, interest rates remain stubbornly high, and this creates an immediate pressure in the order of 650,000. The capital programme for next year is 6.1 million, and the costs associated with that have been built into the revenue budget. Other assumptions of note is that we've assumed that the Welsh Government grants will continue during 24/5, and we've assumed that there won't be any inflationary uplift for those. In respect of the levy for each local authority, I would like to draw members' attention to Appendix 3, which shows the impact of the levy for each local authority. And these figures have been based on the population estimates provided to us. The revised contribution for each local authority has been circulated to Directors of Finance, and updated following the last meeting. So in conclusion, the current planning assessment is for a budget requirement of 52.4, which and following the use of reserves relates to 51.8 to be met through levy. Chair, I'm happy to take any questions on the report that members may have.
Diolch, Annan. So first of all, over to the Treasurer. David, dych chi eisiau dweud rhywbeth? Diolch.
Diolch, Cadeirydd.
Yes, thank you, Chair. And thank you also to Helen for running through the figures, and to all the finance officers for all of the work that has gone on behind this. What you see here is it's like an iceberg. You see the tip of the iceberg, but a great deal of the work is under the water level being done by Elgan and the team, and they have done good work here. Just some context, you approved the minutes at the beginning of today's meeting, and there you as an authority noted the assumptions, the initial assumptions from this budget. Of course, the work had begun before that, and there was a number of meetings of the scrutiny committee and on the budget, and Mark chaired the committee at which, and that working group did detailed work, key detailed work, hand in hand with the officers. And I think that the officers and the working group have hit an appropriate balance in the budget that we have before us today. There is not too much risk in it, and we are also minimizing the levy for the local authorities that constitute us. And as Helen has said, she and I have kept in touch with the treasurers from the councillors throughout the process, and we have briefed them and have met them in July and November, and they're quite aware of what's gone on, and the budgetary assumptions were presented to the audit committee and the executive panel on the 16th of December, and there you as members supported the proposals that were before you. There is no significant change in the figures since then. The constituent authorities have received notice of the levy, and it's a requirement that we do that before December, and it's today that we are asking you for the formal approval of the authority or the budget. Finally, it's a requirement for me as treasurer to report on the robustness of the estimates. There are always risks which are alleviated, and maybe some of the greatest risks are inflation. Inflation in general has come down over the last year from the high levels that they saw in 2022-23. They seemed to be ticking up a few months ago and down again last week. So we can't say that there's an accurate figure as to inflation for the next year, but I think that the risk that we have here, the provision for inflation, is prudent. There are other risks, of course, but I think that there has been an appropriate balance struck here, and if we were to be more prudential, we would increase the levy, and that would put more pressure on the councils, which is something that neither you nor we wanted to do. So I think there's an appropriate balance here, and as your statutory finance officer, I have considered all of the risks and the mitigation steps, and I am of the opinion that the budget before you is robust, sufficient, and achievable. So, of course, I'm open for questions, but you have discussed this in the previous two meetings. So I hope that we can give our approval to this and move on today. Thank you. Thank you very much, David, for your comments.
First of all, just once again, thanks to the Budget Scrutiny Working Group for the excellent work that they've done under Mark's chairmanship. So thank you very much. As has been pointed out, the process has already been closely scrutinised by both subcommittees, so there's no surprises here. And also for members' information, the Chief Fire Officer and myself attended an online meeting last Friday with chief executives and leaders of the 6 local authorities across North Wales, just to update them where we are at, and also to update them on a couple of other strategic issues. And they acknowledged that there were no surprises, and they did voice their thanks for the way that Helen has been regularly in contact with Section 151 officers, so that they were fully aware of how things were sort of progressing. So that was good, positive feedback from them. Any comments or questions from members? No, John Renron, bore da.
Bore da. It's not that it's go ddim am newid dim byd, ond
It's not going to change anything, but the pity is that the formula as to the grant we get from the Welsh Government doesn't come to how much we have to pay in the levy to the authority. I note that here we have the greatest increase to Gwynedd, and the pity of it is that we are the second from the bottom in the grants that we receive from the Welsh Government. I know that that won't change anything here, but I think we ought to note that. Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? No, I can't see any hands being raised. So if I can draw members' attention to page 34, which contains the recommendations, it is recommended that members 1. Note the findings of the Budget Scrutiny Working Group, including the planning assumptions being used to develop the revenue budget for 2025-26. 2. Note the current financial planning assessment of a budget requirement of £52.389 million for 2025-26. 3. Note the proposal to utilise £0.601 million of reserves for 2025-26. And 4. Endorse the communication of the draft financial levy of £51.788 million from the constituent local authorities. Can I have someone to propose and second, please? Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Deputy Chair. Will you show that you're in agreement? Diolch yn fawr. That's been unanimously passed. So we go on to now item number 11. The Welsh Government consultation on employee contribution rates for the firefighters pension scheme. And I'm so grateful that Helen's going to present this. Diolch, Helen.
I think I probably get the award for the longest title. Effectively, this report provides the background on the proposed response to the Welsh Government's consultation. And if approved, that will be sent in the name of the Fire Authority. The consultation is on the employee contribution rates for the employees who are members of the Firefighters Pension Scheme. By way of background, the Firefighters Pension Scheme provides benefits to those within the scheme, which includes provision for their retirement and also surviving partners and dependent children. What that requires is that employees are required to pay towards the cost of their benefits that they build up in the scheme. And each 4 years, an actuarial valuation is conducted to ensure that the level of contributions made by members and employers are adequate given the cost of the pension benefits in payment. Currently, all active members of the scheme contribute to the scheme by paying contributions, and that's based on salary bandings. And it's based as a percentage of pensionable pay. And the overall proportion of pensionable pay that members collectively are expected to contribute is known as the yield. And the yield of 13.2% of pensionable pay is required to ensure the future sustainability of the scheme. If the yield isn't met, the cost of the scheme will fall unduly on taxpayers. And whilst the yield is a fixed percentage, it's calculated as an average across all employed firefighters. What that means is people who earn less probably pay a lower contribution, and as you go through your career, you actually pay a higher percentage. More recently, the yield has not been sufficient and is currently below the target rate, and therefore the government is now consulting on the options that are available to address this. Within the consultation, there's a number of principles, and that's the first one being that the contributions need to be affordable and that the changes should not induce members to opt out of the scheme. The rate should be structured in favour of lower paid members of the scheme, so the more you earn, the more you pay. That rate should not discourage career progression. So what we don't want to do is stop people wishing to further their career because the pension contributions become too onerous. It also needs to be future-proofed so that we don't have to go through a consultation period every 4 years. And then finally, the system needs to be relatively straightforward to administer. And that administration is about reducing the risk of error and making sure that it's understandable. So within the consultation document, there are 4 options. The first one being to maintain the current system, but effectively just change all of the contribution rates. definitely the simplest option, but it doesn't future-proof it. The reason it doesn't is every time there's a growth in salaries due to cost of living, effectively people move between bands. The second option is to update the current system to introduce contributions on a marginal basis, and that's similar to the mechanism for determining tax. And that means that an employee's contribution rate would vary. So you would pay a set contribution for the first X number of thousand of earnings, then it would increase for the next. And whilst this does remove any disincentive for promotion due to higher contributions, it does present massive challenges in terms of the administration. Third option is to calculate contribution rates based on actual salary rather than a notional salary or an assumed pensional pay. That would definitely benefit the on-call employees, but the opposite side of that is we would need to increase contribution rates for all staff to ameliorate the impact. And then the final option is to link contributions to the grade structure set out with the terms and conditions of service. So effectively, if you're a firefighter, you pay one rate. If you're a crew manager, you pay another rate, and so on and so forth. Within the paper today, the proposed response confirms that linking contributions to grade structures provides the easiest scheme to administer, and that supports the principles established. However, we are mindful that in its current form, it contains a disincentive effect for employees, and that relates to the promotion due to the significant effect of widening the contribution rates between the bands. This option includes a reduction in contributions for firefighters, but increases contributions for crew managers and above. We understand that the Welsh Government is working with the Government Actuaries Department to look at this, and subject to that disincentive effect being addressed, this would actually remain the preferred option. I'm happy to take any questions on the consultation or indeed the underlying principles. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Helen. Any questions or comments in relation to the report? No, I can't see any hands being raised. So if I refer you to the recommendations, which are 1, note the background to the Welsh Government consultation, and 2, approve the response to be submitted on behalf of the authority. And thank you, Helen, for all the excellent work in relation to this, what looks like a legal financial minefield to me. Can I have somebody to propose and second, please? Thank you, John Brynmore. Second, Deputy Chair, I think, yeah. So will you show that you're in agreement? Diolch yn fawr. So that's been passed. So the next item is item 12, which is the Equality, Diversity and Inclusion Annual Performance Assessment for 2023-24. I think it's the Deputy Chief Fire Officer who's presenting this, Stuart.
Diolch, Cadeirydd. Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I'll be presenting this item. So, members, this item relates to performance of the Authority's Equality, Diversity and Inclusion Annual Assessment for 2023-24, and that's in relation to its progress towards achieving a long-term strategic equality action plan, which spans 2020 to 2024, and its compliance with the Equality Act 2010. The Authority is required under various pieces of legislation to give a public account of its performance, progress and compliance, and these include the Equality Act, which relates to the Authority to produce a strategic equality plan every 4 years and to report annually on the progress that it's made towards fulfilling its equality objectives. These priorities are broken down into 6 equality objectives that the Authority wants to help bring about Make Wales a Fairer Place to Live, and they're included in the Authority's Strategic Equality Plan 20 to 24. Having identified these objectives, the Authority has a duty to take all reasonable steps to pursue them and to report publicly on the progress that it's made. In previous years, the Authority has included the Equality, Diversity and Inclusion Annual Performance Assessment, along with the Compliance Against Welsh Language Standards, as part of the publication of the Annual Performance Assessment, which members and the Authority has already signed off. However, this year, these were separated into separate reports, and that's why you're seeing them at different times. Therefore, the Annual Performance Assessment 2023 to 24 attached to this paper really demonstrates how the Authority has continued to make good progress against all 5 priorities, and the 6 equality objectives, and you will read, members, some of the great work that colleagues across the organisation have been doing over the past 12 months. The 5 priorities within the authority's strategic equality plan are broken down into 6 quality objectives that the authority wants to help bring about, make Wales a fairer place to live. And the aim of the Equality Act is to ensure that everyone has the right to promote the equality of opportunity, foster good relations, and eliminate discrimination. So within the report, you will see that priority 1 focuses on life and health and covers equality objective number 1. The report describes how prevention and protection teams continue to offer a consistent and inclusive service, and how by developing new personal data and data sharing agreements, the authority has been able to adopt to its approach using protected characteristics to identify groups of people that may be at increased risk of fire in the home and work, in which we then tailor the safety messages that we deliver. Priority 2 relates to employment and covers equality objective 2. The assessment covers the range of initiatives that have been progressed aimed at increasing the employment prospects of people who might otherwise find it difficult to gain equal access to the world of work, and advance gender equality across North Wales. Priority 3 relates to education, and this includes how the authorities continue to develop an inclusive culture where leaders and staff demonstrate their commitment to promoting equality and support a fair and inclusive workplace. This section also includes how there's been a continued delivery of specific EDI training for leaders across all levels of each service, with a provision informing best practice and acknowledging that various procedures and policies have been updated during the year. This also encompasses equality objective 3. Priority 4 covers personal safety and the work around reducing the risk to death or injury through the provision of effective prevention and protection services, and also our emergency response. Examples of how Welsh language has been further embedded into the delivery of key safety messages also included in this section. Including other examples and how priority has been met include the work the service has delivered with the Gypsy, Roma and travelling communities during key safety campaigns, and details of a community event in February in 2024 by the service's Fire Pride staff network, which enhanced the evidence against equality objective 4 and 5. Finally, priority 5 focuses on the participation and communication of the equality objective 6, detailing how important it is to be open and accountable about what we do and what plans to encourage more people to involve themselves in the process of determining the way fire and rescue services are delivered in North Wales. Members will remember the engagement work undertaken during the consultation for the emergency cover review, and this provided really good evidence against this priority, as equality impact assessments were conducted at different stages of that project, and a full equality analysis report was produced and shared with members following the consultation. The assessment also refers to the variety of freedom of information requests received by the service in relation to its EDI work, and some requests related to gender equality, LGBTQ+ communities, harassment cases, and some that were specific in the expenditure of EDI activities. Therefore, members, recommendation is to ask you to approve the annual assessment of the authority's Equality, Diversity and Inclusion Annual Assessment for 22-23 for publication on the authority's website, and to note the service's intention to publish a simple summary version of the key elements of the assessment report, which is attached to this paper. Thank you, Chair. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Stuart. A lot of good work highlighted in this assessment report, and I think it also helps to evidence the progress that we are making on our cultural journey as well. I thought Councillor Owen Robertson put his hand. No. Any questions or comments from members? No. In that case, can I ask for a proposer and a seconder, please? Deputy Chair Mark Young, diolch yn fawr when you showed. Diolch yn fawr. That's been passed. So we go on to item 13, which is the Power Decarbonisation Plan. I think it's ACFO Stuart Millington who's presented this. Thank you, Stuart.
Yeah, members will recall that back in July 2023, the authority adopted an environmental strategy in order to help us achieve our work towards carbon neutrality by 2030. As part of this strategy and our statutory requirements, we must take reasonable steps to reduce our Scope 2 or indirect carbon emissions resulting from electric consumption. So this plan, the Power Decarbonisation Plan, plans to achieve this by including the installation of solar voltaic arrays at service sites where power demand is sufficient to warrant them. And the costs associated with their installation are borne by a SAILEX financial loan. SAILEX has been set up by Welsh Government in order to provide upfront capital and installation costs for the panel arrays, with repayments being made from the savings achieved and therefore being on a cost-neutral basis. And when capital costs are repaid from the savings that are being made, then the panel should continue to yield a positive financial return whilst also maintaining the reduction in emissions. In tandem with the installation of solar panel arrays, we intend to implement our heat decarbonisation plan and the authority approved in October of last year. This will see inefficient heating systems replaced with low carbon alternatives, as well as efficiency retrofits to building fabric and the upgrade of lighting to LED across our sites, all again funded through the SAILEX loan system. So it's recommended that members approve the Power Decarbonisation Plan. Yeah, taking the question.
Yes, Stuart, over to members. Any comments or questions? And can I also take this opportunity once again to thank Tim Christensen as the Environment and Climate Change Manager for his good work in this field. Councillor Chris Hughes, over to you, Chris.
Thank you, Chair. Can I commend this report to members? I think it's an excellent report and goes a significant way to supporting the proposals and the agenda for the authority in terms of decarbonisation. So I'd like to move the report, Chair.
Thank you very much, Chris. And this obviously builds on the good work that you and other members were involved in the Environment Working Group. So we have a proposal from Chris. Can I have a seconder, please? Thank you, Councillor Mark Jones. Will you show that you approve the recommendation? Diolch yn fawr. So the plan has been approved. So on to the last item, item 14, which is the residual carbon emissions plan. And back to you again, Stuart, please. Thank you.
Yeah, okay. So just to remind members, there are 3 scopes for carbon emissions. Scope 1 being carbon generated as a direct impact of our activities, that being our buildings and our fleet, for example. Scope 2, as we've just been talking about, which is in relation to electricity usage. And Scope 3 is relating to the carbon impact of goods and services purchased. And whilst much work is being done as part of our environmental strategy to achieve carbon neutrality by 2030, as it currently stands, there will be some residual carbon emissions that cannot be directly mitigated. These residual emissions make up just over half of our total carbon footprint and are predominantly from Scope 3 emissions, that being goods and services purchased. It's necessary for us to have a plan in place for how we're going to address this residual carbon. And carbon emissions can be dealt with in 2 ways, these being to mitigate or to offset. The most cost-effective way of dealing with residual emissions that cannot be mitigated is to offset by sequestering atmospheric carbon dioxide in trees. This is included within our residual carbon emissions plan, but it would be necessary to initiate a scheme with the Woodland Trust that would cost in excess of £1 million. And therefore it's proposed that all means to mitigate Scope 1 and 2 emissions are fully exhausted before any carbon offset scheme is initiated. And therefore, this report recommends that members approve the residual carbon emissions plan, if we need to have a plan, but that we direct the Environmental and Climate Change Manager to begin implementing the plan only once all carbon emissions arising under Scope 1 and 2 have been fully mitigated. And again, I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Stuart. And I don't think we want to be sort of going down the road of spending another £1 million. I'm sure members would agree. Any comments or questions, please? No. Can I have a proposer? The seconder? Thank you, Mark Young. Thank you, Chris Hughes. Will everybody show that they're in agreement? Diolch yn fawr. Those recommendations have been passed. As I said at the beginning, there aren't any urgent matters, so we certainly have finished before 11:30 this morning. Can I thank all members and officers for their participation and contributions, and have a good week, everybody. Diolch yn fawr, pawb.
Diolch yn fawr, thank you.
Diolch yn fawr, diolch yn fawr.
Yeah.
Diolch.